except Mr. Joe Bagley. Joe is the biggest supporter of VMUG in the UK, I would say. Joe's done this many, many years, and I'd like to welcome Joe on stage to do it one more time for us. Mr. Joe Bagley.
Cheers, Dave. Thank you. Hello. Dave's going to now go home and tell his family he's presented to a bigger audience than Stephen Bartlett, so he's really happy about that. So I'm quite proud about that. So, look, as Dave just said, VMUG is massively important to VMware. VMUG is massively important now to Broadcom. When I joined VMware a long time ago, the first thing I wanted to do was engage with the community because it was the most important thing to our success. When the acquisition was going on with Broadcom, it was a thing that I expressed during the process to Hock about how important the community is to the success of Broadcom and everything that goes on with all of us together. That culminated in Explore last year when I got him to come and, after some persuading, come and give a presentation for 5 minutes to the VMUG leaders meeting that we had in a basement with some wine. And he spent over an hour and a half there and couldn't believe that this community existed and all these people were volunteers and doing it out of their own good and for their own careers, et cetera, et cetera. And off the back of that, VMUG got more funding now within Broadcom than it's ever had within VMware. More attention, more everything. So it's not, we're not lying when this is said. This isn't, Hock just doing a video and swapping things out for it. It's actually genuinely heartfelt and properly meant that VMUG is important. So that's really, it's something I wanted to cover at the start. 2011 was the first time we did a UK UserCon. It was just after I joined VMware in May 2011. This is the presentation I gave for the keynote that year on clouds, etc. The main theme of my presentation in 2011 was around what we needed to think about. Bear in mind, this is 13 years ago, is that those of you out there in your businesses need to stop thinking about infrastructure and start thinking about platforms on which you build services. And then I showed this slide that I'd literally drawn on a piece of paper. Someone turned it into a slide for me, because clearly making that was way beyond my capabilities, for a presentation I gave in Copenhagen at VMworld, as it was called then, about the way that we are increasingly building layers of abstraction, and talking about PaaS back then and Cloud Foundry, but essentially putting these layers in that give you abstraction on top of other things. In fact, here's me with that slide in the room downstairs in this building in 2011, just to show you that it did actually happen. This is before we changed the layout, so now you have to exit through the gift shop from the keynote, but it's slightly different. But back then, in 2011, and this is why the whole theme of this is I feel like I'm going back in time all the time at the moment, is we talked about how you get compute, storage, and networking together and put them together into this thing called cloud infrastructure. That's what will then give you private cloud and infrastructure as a service, which then you can take, infrastructure renters, which will provide you with cloud infrastructure in the public cloud, and then you can move your apps seamlessly if they're running on the same thing that you've got on premises, which let's call that VMware Cloud Foundation, and you can drag and drop it over here to something in the public cloud, let's call that VMware Cloud Foundation. You can then have private cloud, a secure hybrid cloud, and a service provider cloud, which that then we called VMware vCloud, because we were really good at naming things, so just put V in front of stuff, and that's how it worked. And then we talked about how you get your new applications, your new enterprise apps. You have this new application platform using cloud technologies, and you do agile development, cloud scale, data access portability, and, Spring, vFabric, Gemfire, and other things that you might remember like Cloud Foundry, all of which have grown on today, still now Broadcom products as part of the family and have grown. So this vision is something we laid out for you 13 years ago, and we've delivered, and we're delivering on. And I think that's the point I want to make today, is that the one thing that we've done in this whole journey is back then in 2011, one of the reasons I joined was my interview process for VMware was legendary because I had 23 interviews in 3 days in Palo Alto. I held the record. But not long after that, just after I joined, we used to have an internal R&D conference at VMware called Radio. which stood for the R&D Innovation Offsite, which everyone wanted to get to because it was the cool place to hang out. And at the first one of those, I ended up in a bar in Monterey with a few people, including Steve Herrod and Kit Colbert and Raghu and a couple of others, probably about 11 of us, discussing this future architecture strategy whilst drinking alcohol, and came up with the term, almost as a joke, because everyone was talking about software-defined everything, of a software-defined data center. And if you look after that time, after radio, that's when it starts to appear in all the Google search things, is that term software-defined data center, which they then launched as an idea and a concept at VMworld that year in Vegas, actually, with The Killers as the band, I believe, if I remember rightly. So this thing's been happening for a while. It's been our vision. And so when people then ask me, Joe, you know, Broadcom, loads of people left, why are you still there? Honestly, I could have left, quite happily could have left and gone off and spent the rest of my time racing cars and riding mountain bikes and trying various other ways to kill myself. But honestly, from my personal view, I feel that we are finally going to deliver this vision. This thing I laid out, this operating system for data centers, as I called it back then, we're going to finally get to that and deliver it with what we're doing with VCF9. And I want to explain some stuff around what's going on internally with that in a moment. 2012, I was back here again for the keynote. This time I was on a slightly smaller hovercraft than I'm on right now. Bit weird. What was it? Was that 12 years younger, 3 stone heavier, something like that, I think? Bad times. And then we were talking about abstract pooling and automating. Again, reminding you to put a layer in above all those infrastructure bits that you have that you think you know and love and hug and want to look after, and just put a layer on top of it and automate the damn thing and move on up with your lives. And we came up with this definition of a software-defined data center, which is all infrastructure services are delivered as software, right? And the control of this data center is entirely driven by software. An API should come along and enable you to do that. Now, back in 2012, we were having fantastic discussions in the industry about what that API should be. Should it be the EC2 API? In which case, where OpenStack came along and decided they were going to suddenly have this API that was going to compete with both EC2 and with VMware, and there was a whole bunch of stuff. We can write a whole book on that. Randy probably will, but that didn't go very well. We ended up actually landing on something called Kubernetes and some other bits. 2013, I remember talking about this, some chickens and some kittens. Some of you might remember that, about how you need to think differently about how you manage your workloads and stop thinking about them all being your individual pets. That's my cat, still alive, by the way. Still bringing dead things into the house. But not anymore, because I've now got an AI cat flap that actually identifies when she's got stuff in her mouth and won't open, which is really cool. So at least technology's moved on a lot since 2013. And more importantly, start to think about your workloads out there and your VMs and what you're doing with them like some kind of massive chicken farm where you don't give them names, you don't care what they are. The output's important, which is the eggs that you're getting out of them or the meat, not the actual individual chicken, right? 2014, somehow after some Googling, which I don't recommend you ever do with the search terms I had to use, I came up with this picture, which is about chicks and kittens living together. This is before AI could generate images for you. Oh my God, that was fun. But this, again, continually talking about this infrastructure as code concept, right? This fact that what we're going to do for you is give you this foundation for this software-defined enterprise where you have your lovely apps of different types. You then underneath that have compute, you have networking, storage into this virtualized abstract pooled architecture, which you then can put out to other people, a hybrid cloud, blah, 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 isn't it wonderful, et cetera, et cetera. The software-defined data center. 2015, still in this building. I'm actually talking about as many things as I could list at one time there. Containers, microservices, turtles, chickens, God knows what else, cowboys, beards, and other animals. I think I'd run out of ideas, no. 2017, I'm jumping some about here, only because I like this image. Because containers came along and we were talking about them here 2013, 2014, but now everyone's talking about containers suddenly in 2017, by which time we had it already supported in what we're doing. And then we get to 2023. And 2023 last year was an interesting one, and I turned up here with, not here, but just down the road, with a slogan that got me into some trouble, but also got me some notoriety, that I've been using that year in my presentations, which was this, which summarizes where we are as an industry. and it still does today. And so in fact, what I really meant was this, by the way. So if you see that journey that we've come on here in this group of people over the last 13, 14 years, as we look at how infrastructure has evolved, or hopefully has evolved, into where we are today, we now get to the situation we're in 2024. And that situation we're in 2024 is actually quite sad, if I'm honest with you. I find it quite annoying to go to customers, and it's not your fault, by the way, to go to customers that are continually in this situation. And the situation I would describe as a mass generalization, but this is literally my day, and I do spend my day talking to the CIOs of everything from our largest banks down to healthcare, down to defense, down to you name it, across the entire Europe, Middle East, and Africa region. You go and see someone, and it's like, well, yeah, kind of what they've got is they've had a cloud-first strategy for X years. Who cares, right? And in every single situation, it's not gone well. It's not gone to plan, right? They've not got as much over there as they thought they were going to get over there. Nothing's quite working as it should do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Why did they pick that in the first place? Any number of reasons, but usually it's someone who's very senior went to go and play golf with or had an F1 experience with some hyperscaler and came back, and that was the future. And you get so that's where everyone is right now. We then get to what we're talking to them about, which is they go, well, yeah, what we've now realized is we've got to the cloud, and this is why this slide was in the keynote for Explore, because as you may guess, I have quite a lot of input into the keynote for Explore and what gets presented there and how we put it together, is that when we go and talk to customers, I'm not lying when everything I have a conversation with customers about is about cost, complexity, and compliance, typically around some kind of failed public cloud attempt. A partner I was chatting to at Explore told me a fabulous story which encapsulates this perfectly. One of their customers had come to them and said, we need to knock £3 million off our public cloud bill. Quite a large organization. We need to knock £3 million off public cloud. They went, they did the evaluation. They worked out the only way these people could knock £3 million off their public cloud bill was to bring some stuff back into private cloud. I hate to use the term on-prem, off-prem, because it's a bit irrelevant, because I can have a private cloud in colo or whatever, doesn't really matter, but basically bring it out of this hyperscaler and put it into something else they're going to run themselves. And the CIO said, I can't do that. And they said, can't or won't? And won't was the answer, because he built his reputation on that. That's what he'd gone to the board with, to say, we're going all in on public cloud. Public cloud's going to solve all of our problems. We're going to be brilliant. So this partner put together a proposal that actually, in the end, saved them £4.5 million by building stuff on-prem. He said, I don't believe you because you're telling us that, and I'm going to go and check because AWS were obviously telling us they were going to save money, etc. Got 2 external consultancies to come in. They both concurred with the partner, and now they're building on-prem facilities. And this is a story I'm hearing everywhere I go. Part of the problem, and in fact, when you go around and look, this is a survey done by Barclays of CIOs of reasonable-sized organizations. You can go and look it up. It's freely available on the internet, the Barclays CIO survey, if you want to go and use it in your own stuff. It says 83% of enterprises plan to move workloads back to private cloud from public cloud. Now, what I'm not saying, again, is there is not some huge repatriation trend going on. It's not happening, okay? There are isolated pockets of where people are bringing workloads back. It's not some mass migration. But at the same time, you really want to sort of put it as what you're looking at is a bunch of stalled, failing public cloud migrations where people are going, well, maybe we'll stop that, and maybe we'll bring that bit back, and then we'll reevaluate where we are and look at what we need to do going next. That's really what this slide shows you in terms of what's happening. What it means is, for me, who stood on this stage and various other forms of hovercraft over the years and said, hybrid cloud is what we're going to be doing. And people went, of course you said that, Joe. You work for VMware and you sell stuff to on-premises. It's the truth. Hybrid cloud is where people are going to be. You are going to have to put right workload, right place. what happened is people went, you can't just go, public cloud is the answer. Let's solve all the problems with public cloud, because you don't know it's the right answer. I've always said that's like saying in 1996, Compaq is my strategy, and I'm going to run everything on Compaq. It sounds bonkers, doesn't it, right? But that's just as bonkers as saying Amazon is my strategy and everything's going to run on Amazon. How are you that arrogant? How can you tell me that you know everything you do today in IT is going to run on that, and everything you're going to do in 5 years is going to be running perfectly well in that cloud too? And then the other thing I hear, which I love most, is when I go to customers and say, yeah, so we're looking at the commercials around VCF, and we're a bit worried because, it's all subscription now, and what I'm really worried about most is that you'll give us a price now, and then in 3 years' time you'll have locked us in, and you're going to ram the price up and completely screw us. These are the same people that are signing big deals with hyperscalers and signing up big deals with Microsoft to supply all their, and you're like, did you have that conversation with them? Or was that just okay to go and lock yourself into the hyperscaler? I don't get this. You have to go and look at a platform, see that it provides you value, and go with it. So when we put up these slides that say the future of the enterprise is private, what we mean is you need to understand that there will be a private element to what you're doing. You will be building your own infrastructure. The challenge with this is that it comes down now to cost. So people are saying public cloud's too expensive, I need to do something else. So they then go back and look on their on-prem and say, well, let's see if we can get on-prem cheaper. And unfortunately, on-prem isn't cheaper because it's not moved on. Despite people like us standing on stages for 13 years saying, abstract, pool, automate, build services, platforms, blah, 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 there's still people out there operating in compute, storage, and networking silos in how they build and operate. I could say I'm getting bored of telling people, but I'm not, because it's still fun, right? But it is getting a little repetitive, if I'm honest with you. We had the same problem. And so if you want to know what's the big change between VMware and Broadcom, it's this. Prior to the acquisition, if you went and looked at our R&D organization, and my colleagues in the audience and ex-colleagues will giggle at this one, I hope, there was a bunch of fiefdoms interspersed with a few cults, okay? So you had the ESX kind of BU, which had a bit of storage tacked onto it, but that was all about the hypervisor, and we went and worshipped the kernel developers and everything about that, and they had their own individual future, that was what they were planning on. So their roadmap went this direction, all right? Then we had the cult of networking that was known as NSX, that never accepted they should be part of anything else, so we were on their own journey in this direction, okay, doing NSX-y type of things, all right? And then over here we had the automation people, which was one company that we then acquired another company and some other bits, and then we changed the name of it once every week just to keep you all on your toes. And that was going in this kind of direction. And then we had the office of the CTO, myself and a few others, that used to wander around trying to persuade people in a really nice way to do stuff the way we thought they should do it, but inevitably they just, kind of did that and walked on. And then there were some other bits, but there was this one bit across the top where we tried to put something across the top of all of that called VCF. And the result of that was that we got to the situation where we would bring out a new version of the hypervisor, and you'd go, great, I run VCF 4.Blair. When can I have that hypervisor version? You go, oh, about 9 months, actually, because it's not going to be supported in VCF for another 9 months because of this bit. And then we've got to go and talk nicely to the NSX people over here. And then we've got to go and speak to the Tanzu people to see which version of TKG letter of the month they've come up with this week to work out what they're going to do, how that works. And then, does this sound familiar? Right, mess. And this is what gave me hope and made me think this is why we're going to change, because we are. Because the idea that we came out of the message that Hock personally clearly got through the conversations he had with us during the process was that the product's VCF. The rest are just bits that make VCF work. And so now, that's why you hear us talk about VCF all the time, because that's the only product we've got. Now, when you hear us talk about what's going on, we will release VCF, and all the bits that go with it will come at the same time. All right? When we release VCF 9, There will be all the components you can name underneath it will become version 9, and they will all work together. There will be no compatibility matrix for you to mess around with to work out what works with what. If the number's the same, you're good, right? That's the focus. We've got rid of our silos. We have one BU. And that one BU's job is to deliver VCF. The roadmap for the hypervisor is driven by VCF, not by the hypervisor team. The roadmap for vSAN is driven by the VCF roadmap. Everything is driven by the VCF roadmap. Have you got the message? It's all about the VCF roadmap. So the product you get from us is VCF. VVF is a derivative of VCF, obviously, but it's driven by what we're doing at that level. We have predictable cadence, which is something you never got before, right? Remember when before we used to go, when's the next version of VCF coming out? You go, don't know, really. 2 years, 2.5 years, not really sure. Yeah, well, it depends when we can get the ESX team and then that bit and that bit and that bit to line up and everything else, and that's what's going to work. Nope, done. 9 will come out, then 9 months after that, 9.1, then 9 months after that, 9.2, then 9 months after that, 9.3, then 9 months after that, 10. That's what we're doing. It's that simple. When you're building one product. Now, what's that going to mean? There's going to be some standardization to make things simpler for us to do that, because we can't beat those kind of cadences unless we get more people doing things the same way. So VCF is built and focused on providing that resilience, security, and cost savings, but it's around building that one product that has everything built into it. On top of that, we have this big catalog of advanced services. And a bit later on, I'll go into what those advanced services are and give you some ideas of what kind of things go in there. But all the other stuff I'll list. There's a brilliant big slide of that in a minute. But this slide was put up at the start, and it still stands to this day. Number one is to simplify VMware. Boy, is that happening. It's not been easy, okay? You know, getting all those silos and making them work together has not been easy. It's been challenging, right? It's been entertaining. It's been distressing at times. It's been not easy, is the simple way to put it. It's not like you can go and put everyone in the car park and then get them to rearrange themselves and bring them back in and work in a different way. People have to carry on. Products have to still be supported. But things have been simplified massively in how we do things and how we deliver products. That investment in innovation is going into R&D and the money that we're spending in making that happen, and obviously enhancing our partner ecosystem. So we went through a bit of a bumpy start at the beginning of the year about what we do with our partners, but that's settled down now, hopefully, to make it quite clear to most people what we're doing with our partner community, what we're doing with our cloud service providers, and everything else as we go forwards. A lot of change has happened in 1 year that previously probably would have taken VMware 5 or 7 years to do. We've done in 1 year. But the leaps forward that we've made in that 12 months are absolutely phenomenal. And trust me, when we've settled down into it, you're going to see that this next year from us is going, and by, you know, we run our financial year November to October, by the way, so we're into our next year now, which is why I'm talking about this year. So this year for us is going to be that big change. VCF 9 will come out and everything else will follow on. So let's have a look a little bit more at VMware Cloud Foundation. So those silos that I talked about that slow down innovation, we went out and did some research with IDC with some of our customers, because remember I talked about why people, you know, do public cloud, then they look back and they can't find the private cloud to be cheaper? It's because they've not focused on the private cloud for so many years, because all the stuff's been looking at the shiny thing. So what they end up coming back to is this kind of accretive, cancerous mess, is a nice way to, polite way to put it, I think. Because people are turning around and going, right, okay, well, we need a private cloud now. Whoa, what is that? Yeah, it's bigger than when they left it, because it didn't just shrink, because workloads grew and people needed to do new stuff. There was no real strategy around it, because it wasn't where we were focusing, because we're focused on the shiny public cloud thing. And so no surprise when you get there, it's messed up. And actually, when we looked across a lot of our customer base, when they ran it separately, what they're looking at, this legacy architecture, as they're calling it, split into these silos without some decent cloud platform and some automation on top of it, was costing them on average about 30 to 40% more than it should do. When in reality, if we deploy VCF properly, we can get VCF to be cheaper than public cloud in every possible way. Public clouds are running on 30% plus margin. Of course you can do it cheaper on premises if you do it right. Okay? So VCF now looks like this. This bottom section is everything that you get in VMware Cloud Foundation. Fundamentally, the automation operations piece plus the modern cloud interface. I'm going to talk about some of that in a minute, what we're going to get in VCF 9. Then on top of that, you have the advanced services, and I'll break through some of those for you too. I will share this deck, by the way, as a PDF afterwards to all of you, so don't worry about it. I'll make sure the VMUG people get to send it out. You can have pictures of my chickens and kittens as a PDF. When I say private cloud, I'm meaning not like just on premises. It could be running in, yes, self-deployed on your own stuff managed by you. You could be consuming it as a service through AWS or Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud. You saw Amazon probably announce their new Elastic service today, which is essentially bare metal that you install VCF off and run, exactly the same as you would do in other providers as well. And then you've got VCF by various other VCF cloud, VMware cloud providers around the world. So there's a whole different ways that you can consume VCF. But what I mean is it's something that you're in control of in terms of the cost model, in terms of how you run it, what sits on it, everything. It's not renting someone else's stuff. That gives you, importantly, license portability and workload portability. One of the big changes you get with VCF is you can freely move stuff around between these clouds and take your licenses with you. And that's huge, actually, in terms of making this a lot simpler and what you're doing and where you're going with this. So let's talk about VCF 9. It's announced in Las Vegas. There was a lot of it covered at Explore. I'm going to go through some of that again now for some people. So unfortunately, if you watch the Explore keynote, some of this is going to be a repeat for you, but I have to make sure that everyone understands this. Let's look at the bottom piece, the automation operations, the classic infrastructure side of things. In this, we're going to show you what the new VCF 9 console looks like, which gives you an idea of how everything's coming together and the best way to describe it. So VCF operations is the sort of unified operations console. It's really difficult to see on this screen with the lights and stuff, and I apologize for that, but again, we'll get the slides later. So here you've got all the events, logs, diagnostics, everything, allowing you to get to what you're doing very simply. Also, central governance of policies, OAuth broker identity, unified license management, and all from the same operations console. Lifecycle management at scale. You can plan, schedule, and remediate your entire VCF fleet. We talk about fleet management a lot now. Someone's invented the term fleet management, so that's what we say. So you get to do fleet management and manage things at scale, update a whole bunch of stuff simultaneously, get it all done properly and managed, give you time to focus back on your real job. Config monitoring and config drift monitoring. So again, as we go across, you can see that in a code version. You can see it in a visual version as we start to give you that drift detection into platform. This is my bit that I love, because I always hate these anyway, whenever I'm trying to build any kind of bloody lab. Certificate management. Built in, okay? So it's one of the biggest pain points, right? It breaks life cycles. It's just annoying, is the simple way to put it. So that certificate lifecycle management is built into there. Much, much easier for you. In fact, we've made it a sort of seamless, reliable, sort of worry-free part of your workflow, showing you what are expiring, auto-renewal state, all this kind of stuff to make it easy as possible to make sure that you're staying on top of that and not having an outage because some blooming certificate expired, which is bonkers as far as I'm concerned. And then we've got SecOps stuff as well, which is all the security ops stuff to monitor all your logs and so on and so forth. All brought together into one console, one management plane. So for IT ops, you can now maintain this in a very, very simple way through one simple central console. When we look at the other part, it's not just about ops, it's about agility and how your apps teams can deploy stuff that they need when they need to get it. So when I go through this console, you'll see here we've got self-service. Obviously, you need self-service for that, right? But we've got multi-tenant. VCF 9 has multi-tenant built in. So for those of you who've been loving Lab Manager and VCD ever since and wanting to carry on, it's coming back, all right? You're actually entitled to have VCD now, by the way, as part of your 5.2 licensing if you've got it. But honestly, I wouldn't go deploying VCD now. I'd be waiting for 9 and slowly taking in the multi-tenancy as that evolves into that, and we integrate the VCD 9 features into VCF 9. So you have the ability now to do multi-tenant built in to VCF. Also, you've got in there, when the app admin logs into VCF Automation for the first time, they don't see tickets or infrastructure. They see a collection of infrastructure services and applications that they can deploy. They also get to see their resource utilization. There's a full self-service catalog where the blueprints, all the stuff you've seen before. For example, this one shows a full private AI Kubernetes cluster for your Gen AI application, because they're really cool and everyone's deploying Gen AI on a daily basis, apparently. And if you want to do it all as code, yeah, the full YAML spec's down there as well. So it's all integrated. You do GUI, you can do code, up to you, doesn't really matter. And this integrated intelligent troubleshooting stuff, which is really quite cool and sexy, and I'm sure there'll be other sessions here that will take you through what you can do in that space too. Point is, you get all of this. If you're a VCF licensed customer, you get all of this in that one SKU. So no more do I need VCF automation this and ARIA that and blah, 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 and all the kind of stuff. It's just one thing now, and all of this is there for you to use. So actually the conversation we're having with customers now are more about, wow, what's in the toolbox? What can I do next? How can I make this better? How can I take advantage of this? And that's why, funnily enough, we want you to do the VCF admin bit because it opens your eyes to what's possible. Because half the conversations we're having with customers is, wow, I never knew that existed. Wow, I never knew you could do that. Seriously, all the time. So my encouragement to you is to go out and look and explore all the stuff that's available in VCF, all those features. It might solve that problem you've got. A lot of customers now looking and saying, well, actually, I don't need to buy this product now because I'm getting that free in VCF. I don't need to do that anymore. I don't need to build this custom thing because I'm getting it free in VCF, or included. I won't say free, included in VCF. So again, with that modern cloud interface place, you get that sort of rich infrastructure services and all the bits and pieces you need to provide for app people. We're still doing innovations down in the core. Some of the stuff we've done is the new memory tiering stuff you've seen. We've got native virtual private clouds, which is a big step for a lot of people to have native VPCs in there. vSAN dedupe, there's enough people around here like Cormac and Duncan that can explain what that is to you. And live patching. That is in-place live upgrade without workload migration of hosts. Cool? Yeah. That was a feature I remember. I can't remember if it was on the radio like about 7 years ago we started talking about that, I think to remember, and finally we got it into the product. It was accelerated after the acquisition. So live patching's in there. The other thing, and I can't believe I'm on stage able to say this, but I am, all right? Don't wait to deploy VCF 9. Don't wait for VCF 9 to come out before you start taking advantage of stuff. Get on with 5.2 today, because I can stand here and promise you, all right, there's going to be some people grimacing in the audience. I'm going to see some people smiling, all right? VCF 9 or 5.2 will be fully in place upgradable to VCF 9. No destroy and rebuild. It will be in place upgradable to VCF 9. Obviously, if the HCL stuff matches and everything else, I'm not going to promise everything. But actually, to be fair, the HCL stuff's pretty much identical between 5.2 and 9 anyway. So you will be able to in-place upgrade. When I first joined the company, in fact, Chris Wolf joined a couple of years after me, and Chris Wolf, who was the then CTO for the Americas, and I was CTO for EMEA, we wandered around Palo Alto and a couple of other R&D sites and wrote on every board we could see, upgrade, not migrate, because I was fed up with our people saying that, well, what happens is our users will migrate to the next version. And they don't migrate between versions. I don't migrate between versions of iOS. I in-place upgrade, and it works. This is important to us. And so it's being driven down from the very top, from Chris and Paul and the other Paul that basically run the BU for VCF. This thing will be an upgrade. I think it's not going to quite be an upgrade, an in-place upgrade for CSPs, but we'll get to that one a bit later. It's a bit harder for them. But for everyone else for VCF, it's going to be an in-place upgrade. So when they say meeting you where you are, we have brownfield ingestion technology as well. So if you want to get to 5.2 now, you've got stuff where you can take existing infrastructure and just ingest it into VCF without rebuild, too. So go and look at those features. That came in with 5.2. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible for you to get to VCF, as opposed to the old days of VCF was, oh, would you like to run VCF? Well, in which case, please go and buy a whole new data center's worth of hardware and install everything nice and fresh and new. Not true, right? We are now, what do you got? Right, we'll upgrade that, ingest that to be VCF 5.2, and then when we get to 9, that will upgrade to VCF 9. So again, like 13 years ago when I stood on this stage and said, get on with it and automate, get on with it and upgrade to VCF 9 if you can. Well, there's a slide here that I was going to skip, so I'm going to try and skip it again, if I can get across here. VMUG Advantage has already been mentioned by Dave. This was announced at VMware Explore. I keep saying VMworld. VMware Explore still to this day. Back in November, earlier this month, sorry. So there's exam discounts and free licenses. So you get access to VCF licenses up to 3 years. So you will get a full VCF license to play with and, et cetera, if you do this. And the exam's really quite easy, apparently. Well, if Dave passed it, so to be fair, look at him. I mean, seriously. So it can't be that hard. So I mentioned advanced services. So we talked about VCF, the core of VCF, this base where you get all this stuff included. What's in advanced services? So advanced services is that bit up the top there, and advanced services is all these bits around VMware Cloud Foundation. So it's kind of like if you went to use a public cloud, there'd be additional services you could get on top of that public cloud, like databases and other things. That's exactly what this is. So there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. If I talk you through them all very, very quickly, you've got the vDefend stuff, which is distributed firewall. So that's where NSX distributed firewall is. So for those of you who have not noticed, NSX is included in VCF, but distributed firewall isn't. It's an add-on, right? So it's an advanced service you add on. Data services, there's a thing called the data suite and data services there, which is a whole host of stuff I'll talk to you about in a minute. VLR I'm going to talk about. Private AI I might mention at the end. Automic and automation analytics and event intelligence. That's actually some products that we got from when we came into Broadcom. Broadcom already had, which is quite cool. So if you've not looked at Automic and stuff, probably worth a quick flick across to see what they are. AVI load balancing and all the other kind of stuff up there, and obviously the edge stuff. And that's the interesting thing. So now actually, as of 2 weeks ago, the edge compute stack and VCF Edge and VECO and all those bits and pieces are now all part of the VCF BU as well. So there is no one or the other. It's just a continuum. And VCF Edge is still the push stuff where you're connected to vCenter. You need a nice, strong, permanent connection, essentially, to make it work. ECS Edge Compute Stack with VECO is the I'm only connected occasionally over some really dodgy line over a satellite or whatever, and when I do, I just want to pull down a config update YAML and sort myself out. GitOps kind of thing. We made some announcements at Explore. One of those was VMware Live Recovery for Google Cloud VMware Engine. But what I want to highlight in here is the other thing, which was earlier on in the year. So we've always had VMware Live Recovery. If you don't know what VMware Live Recovery is, it's essentially an immutable data store technology where you can set up a data store elsewhere and have stuff replicating into that in an immutable fashion to enable you to recover from ransomware and other things. And it's actually very clever. The heuristics we've got in that are really brilliant because what we can do is, obviously, if ransomware hits you, for an example, you're going to see a large number of changes as it starts to go and encrypt all the stuff across your data. We can then go back and look at the data store that we've been storing and do intelligence AI magic on it. And at that point say, okay, well, this is the point where there was suddenly the entropy of this went massively the wrong way. And we can see that's when you started to get the encryption hit. So let's go a little bit before then or whatever and pull back and do instant restores. That's always been available on VMware Cloud and AWS. Still is, right? And it's not going away. So if you've heard that other way, it's not true. We announced it's now available, will be available soon on VMware Cloud, Google Cloud VMware Engine. This is the one that's probably more exciting to me, which is going to come out very, very soon, very, very soon, which is an on-premises isolated recovery environment. So you can set up your own on-prem. It doesn't have to be on-prem, okay? It could be just somewhere else in a colo, don't really care, but yours, not some public cloud provider specialty thing. So you can build your own immutable Live Recovery immutable data store. The Tanzu data services stuff actually is pretty good, because people for years have been knocking us saying, hang on a second, you've got a private cloud, but there's no databases. And when I go to public cloud, I get all these data services that I can go and get. Well, there's a whole host of that comes not only with DSM, but also with Tanzu data services, where you've got the new availability of essentially fully supported, fully enterprise-tested and enterprise-supported versions of these open source solutions. So you can then pull in PostgreSQL and PG vector stuff if you want to go and do things with RAG databases and AI. MySQL, RabbitMQ, which we've had for years and years and years, since before 2011, and Valkey, which is a caching system as well, more in memory. So more and more coming across there in terms of services you can put on top to make available in that console for your developers to use. This one I really like because it's a bot and it's cool. So this is Intelligent Assist for VMware vDefend. Intelligent Assist you're going to see coming across a lot of our stuff. So it's nothing special. right? It's just another Gen AI type bot is the best way to describe it. But the way it's been deployed here is actually pretty cool, especially for those of you who are not in large organizations with security specialists. When you look at what this demo does, which is going to run really funny in this, oh, didn't work. Hang on, let me go back to it. I think it takes time, then it kicks off. Does it start? Yeah, do that. There we go. So what this demo is doing is essentially you go over here and there's an alert. You say, investigate this occurrence. It says, OK, I can help with that. Drills you into it. And it says, explain this event to me. And it tells you it's this kind of event. And you go, OK, well, hang on a second. Tell me more about this thing called ICE-D. And it tells you, well, ICE-D is this, it blah, 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 it's this kind of thing. And you then go, OK, well, what are the indicators of compromise? How do you know it's happened? All right? How can I remediate that? Well, you've got two choices. All right, well, I choose that choice. OK, fine. Can you do it? Yes. Create the policies, deploy it, yes, done. So it's like, what's wrong? What's the alert? Explain it to me. Educate me on the decisions I should be making. Give me the options on what I should do based on those decisions, and then actually go out and do it for me. And this is just the start of where you're going to see this level of intelligence coming across all the consoles with what we're doing here to make this private cloud as easy as possible. So when you go and add on those advanced services, you're going to have the ability to essentially provide a true on-prem experience, private cloud experience, that is better than the public cloud. So with VCF 9, the idea is that you can now go back to that mess, tidy that mess up, turn it into a proper private cloud, and then offer proper services that are the equivalent, if not better than, at better resilience and better price points than what you're being looked at in the public cloud. And properly have choice about whether you do stuff on-prem or off-prem or public cloud, private cloud, whatever you want to call it. No one's going to win. You're going to need to do both of them. But if you're going to do both of them, do them both properly. Now, I'm not allowed to give a presentation at the moment without talking about private AI. So I have to give a presentation on private AI, so I'm going to do that. No, it's fine, I'm joking. It's actually quite fun. I spend quite a lot of my time looking in this area, and we've got some of the private AI folks here to talk to you about that too. Private AI, from our perspective, essentially is an architectural approach to doing LLMs and Gen AI, or in fact Gen AI and any AI workload, should I say, but understanding the balance of privacy and compliance needs of the organization. And so customers are using private AI because, and why they're using VMware Private AI, is because they need policy and control resource. Hang on a second, what are you saying here, Joe? Well, here's the story, right? Let me tell you who the early adopters of private AI are. Some large companies, mainly in the US, a couple over here in Europe, that have been out and spent an awful lot of money on some GPUs and have gone around running GPUs everywhere and have got pockets of GPUs all over the place. And they've come to us and they've gone, yeah, we've got a bit of a problem. We've got a bunch of siloed stuff, all running different things, and we need to put some kind of layer across it that sort of, I don't know, virtualizes it all, makes it all pooled and automated, and then gives me some policy control and some resource sharing on that, and make sure that I'm making the best out of it and optimizing it. And you're like, yeah, we kind of do that, except we now do it for GPUs too. In fact, I'm going to say XPUs, because you hear TPUs, you hear a load of other different things. So that's essentially what private AI is. It's the capabilities put into VCF to enable you to have all these XPUs around, integrate them into your management policy and what you're doing in VCF, and make them available in the right way to the right people. And yes, remember when we talked about containers and VMs, and we talked about the fact that containers actually run faster on our hypervisor than they do on bare metal, because there is no such thing as bare metal, it's just Linux, right? Well, oddly, when you go and run all the standard GPU performance testing, some of the stuff actually runs better. That's the green ones. High is better, okay, on ours than it does bare metal. Because of the way we optimize, resource share, do everything else as well. Because we're not just coming to this game. We've been building huge HPC clusters using this technology for over 10 years. It's not suddenly new to us to suddenly do this and bring these type of workloads in. What we're doing is we're hooking you into all the bits on top of that. So when you look at the private AI foundation for NVIDIA, VMware Cloud Foundation is there with all the technology we need to make these things run fast and scale and all that kind of stuff. But on top of that is all the bits and pieces you need to make it work, like deep learning VMs, like vector databases stuff, the PG vector stuff I talked about earlier on, built in, able to use. Catalog setup wizard, the monitoring stuff. I'll talk to you in a minute again about what we're doing in terms of repositories. Then that all bolts in natively into all the NVIDIA stuff. I love here that you can come up with a NIM from NVIDIA, bring it down here, it will recompile it to operate correctly, and then make sure it moves to run on the right processor. So it says, okay, this thing needs to run on that kind of processor, so I'm going to go and put it over there. That's really cool, right? That's what virtualization, cool private cloud stuff should do. You should go, here's a workload, run it in the best, most efficient place, please, go. That's what it does. And it's a huge ecosystem, right? I mean, I call this the NASCAR slide because it's got more logos on it than a NASCAR. But it literally is, everyone is into this game with us, building on top of VMware Cloud Foundation. And there's some really cool names up here, like Hugging Face and other things as well. That are all the trendy names. If you want to sound like you know what you're talking about with AI, just say Hugging Face a lot, apparently, and that's what everyone thinks you're really cool. Mention Ray occasionally as well. They think you're pretty cool about that too. What are the new stuff we're doing in there? Well, the model store. Funnily enough, Harbor, those of you know Harbor, models come in containers. We've had the best container repository going in Harbor. So we've just brought additional capabilities into Harbor. So we now have this amazing model store, which gives you model governance, security, curation, all the other kind of bits and pieces you need. I'm going to jump ahead of a couple of things here. I want to get to this bit. So when I came across to Broadcom, the good thing about being CTO for EMEA for Broadcom, as opposed to just VMware before, is that there's a lot more stuff at Broadcom. And there's some really, really, really cool stuff. And one of the things I want to talk about is this. And this is just geek stuff, okay? So bear with me here. But I don't know if you realize, but Broadcom provide the chipsets for networking for nearly every networking company you buy your stuff from. So Arista, Cisco, you name it, right? All the chipsets inside there come from us. Now, when you get to advanced AI clustering, people are now looking at how you build. Essentially, there's two challenges. Well, there's two competing technologies. There's one which NVIDIA do, which is InfiniBand, which came from their Mellanox acquisition. And there's the other one, which is Ethernet, which everyone else in the world does, and all the open standards run around. And everyone else is essentially switching to Ethernet, because Ethernet, actually, it turns out, is better than InfiniBand in pretty much every way. So we have the tooling. If you're looking at doing, if any of you out there are out there building huge AI clusters, come and talk to us, because we're not going to, Broadcom doesn't sell you the kit, but we will talk to you about the technologies and the architecture that you should be doing and who you should be buying and what you should be buying involving our kit to make it work. But if you want to know some really cool figures, one of our chipsets here provides a backplane in a switch for AI switching that operates at 52 terabits per second, which is mind-blowing, right? And sorry, it's at 51, right? And so, in fact, next month, we're going to be announcing the new chipset, which is 102 terabit per second, which is just, total geek out for me when it gets to looking at that kind of stuff. So there's some really sexy stuff. So I recommend if you're into geeking out on networking and other bits and pieces and all those kind of things, go and have a look at this. Because when you get to what RDMA is, which is essentially processors talking directly to processors and accessing memory to each other without involving operating systems, doing that over 102 terabit backplanes, it gets really freaking sexy very fast. Sorry, I'm getting excited. This is why I'm a CTO. But yeah, there's some really cool stuff, so go and have a look at that. So look, there's a lot going on. Cloud Foundation 9 will come out next year. Quite early next year. It's going to come out next year, right? Advanced services with VCF that I talked about. All these new sexy features, all those bits on top, vDefend, all those things on top of there. Private AI Foundation with NVIDIA. If someone at your business is talking about doing AI, go to them and say, I can help you. VCF that we run will enable you to do everything you need to do in terms of management, governance, security, scaling, making the most of your investment, and making sure that when you go and buy those GPUs, they are fully used. And also do failover. That's another interesting thing, because if one of these chips fails, you're lead time's a nightmare. So the ability to fail over and move around and put resilience in is really cool. Those of you playing with VeloCloud, go and have a look at VeloRain. I didn't really have time to talk about it today, but VeloRain, again, is putting AI into the network. We have 500,000 endpoints running SD-WAN, and the analysis we can do on that, network flows and stuff, we can now start to shape and understand and prioritize encrypted traffic. And so some really cool things going on there where we can actually recognize different types of encrypted traffic and still shape that too. So there is so much to learn about here today at VMUG. So many cool sessions going on, delivered by Broadcom, delivered by our partners. This is your time to dig in and learn. There will be more events, as was talked about. As we go forward, there's a few events that Broadcom are running ourselves. There's the Smarter Way to Cloud events. So if you go to a Smarter Way to Cloud event, it's kind of similar to coming to a VMUG, actually. And in fact, we're technically doing one today. The experience days. If you can get yourself on an experience day, that's a full day, usually in our office, with guided labs and guided process top to bottom on VCF 9 and everything that's going on with VCF. So the VCF experience days are fantastic, so if you can get involved in those too. And then Explore. Yes, there will be Explore in Vegas next year. No, there will not be Explore in Europe next year. We will, however, have Explore events. So there will be some regional 2-day-ish, I think at the moment 2-day events, of which I'm 99% sure one of those will be in the UK after Explore in Vegas. So add that into your calendar as well. So don't think you've got to go to Vegas because that's it. We're going to be running an Explore event here in the UK and others across Europe. The plan for that is literally being put together as I speak. And there will be VMUGs, local VMUGs. And there's local VMUGs all the way from the Coup people up north, the Scottish ones that do it up there, that I go and visit occasionally, down to the London one. The Southwest, there is one as well. So we're still running the Southwest VMUG, still going, and all over. So find your local VMUG chapter. It's not just about coming here this once a year. There is stuff going on all year round to get engaged and be part of this community. So with that, thank you for listening to me ramble on for the 14th year in a row. I will, however, have to mention this, and I'm going to stand out the way now. I'm contractually obliged to show you this, and there will be others as well. This is a survey to do with those Smarter Way to Cloud days that I talked about, so scan this one separately. Please enter this in and rate my session. If you need any help with the scoring, I can just do it for you. No problem. Come and see me at the end. I'll be standing at the back on the entrance to the gift shop helping you type it in. It's not a problem. But yes, please make sure you do these. And some of the sessions through the day will also have these same things coming up as well. So with that, I've got I've left 2 minutes as prescribed to Dave to come on stage and take you through the where to go next piece. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much, Joe. Yeah, just a very, very quick one from me then to wrap this up for you guys, because we've never done this before, weirdly, in all the years. We're going to tell you what to do next. Crazy. There's a 10-minute break. There's a 10-minute break coming up as soon as I get off this stage in about 1 minute's time. Then, these are the places you can go. These are the first things you can look at next. So, one stay here with a guy called Duncan Epping. Yeah. Yep. And then 3 extra sessions here, straight into the VCF stuff straight away. Go see Amit, go see Ben and Michael, go see Gus and Christopher. Stay here, see Duncan Epping. But teas, coffees, start seeing your sponsors. Get out there and enjoy your day, folks, because it's what you make it. And make sure you speak to as many people as possible. Enjoy yourselves. Come back here at the end, and maybe there's some swag to be won. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming today. Appreciate it.